This is the city of Puerto Valdivia, and it's being evacuated. The largest dam Colombia has ever built is about to fail, and the 25,000 people who live downstream from it need to get out of the way fast. This is the Ituango Dam, central to Colombia's ambitions to become energy independent and part of its massive infrastructure building boom. It's 225 meters high, taller than a skyscraper. Behind it is a reservoir that can reach up to 127 kilometers in length and hold 2.72 billion cubic meters of water. And it's all about to come tumbling down. So, how did we get here? On May 13, 2018, authorities sounded the alarm and evacuated at first just 600 residents of Puerto Valdivia. A few days later, the entire city had to be abandoned and the residents all moved into temporary shelters. The flooding that came destroyed 59 homes, 2 schools, a healthcare centre, critical infrastructure. What was left became a ghost town. This mass displacement only exasperated existing social problems in a region already affected by violence and instability. It was just a taste of what could happen if the entire project were to collapse. This incident related only to the side tunnels. If the Ituango breaks, it would endanger the lives of the 120,000 people who live in the Coco River Basin. Despite getting the all-clear to return, few wanted to. The town had been destroyed. More than 400 families were now homeless. What's worse is this wasn't caused by some ancient dam that was in desperate need of fixing. The Ituango Dam was brand new. In fact, this disaster struck just a few weeks before it was due to be complete and open. It was this modern state-of-the-art project that was intended to lift the country to a whole new level. It was designed to be Colombia's largest hydroelectric project and eventually supply some 17% of the country's electricity. And that was power that Colombia desperately needed. The 2 decades prior had seen a swell in the country's population, from 33 million in 1990 to 46 million just before the dam started construction, all the way up to 53 million today. That's like adding the entire country of Australia to Colombia over just a few decades. Unsurprisingly, the nation's power grid was struggling to keep up. An enormous dam like Ituango could prevent future shortages, blackouts, and reliance on expensive thermal plants. There's a reason why Colombia is so eager on dam power. Hydropower already supplied most of the country's electricity, and it remains one of the cheapest sources of energy in the region. Unfortunately, many of Colombia's other hydro projects date from the 1970s or 90s at the latest. They needed newer, more efficient and higher capacity hydroelectric sites so they could eventually scale back and retire those older plants. Now, the fact you're watching this video means you're probably a little bit like me. You love breaking things down and learning how they work or how they don't. Which is why I'm really excited to talk to you about today's video sponsor, Brilliant, which helps you do exactly that. Brilliant is an ingenious platform that helps you master the nitty-gritty fundamentals of maths, engineering, AI, science, and everything else. And the beauty of it is that even if you think you're not particularly fond of maths, you'll soon discover that actually you are. It's like a gym for the brain. I use it to help turn me into a better problem solver, and it helps me unlock my own potential. For instance, I can master algorithmic thinking thanks to these simple and fun lessons that are both visual and interactive, which is great for me because I'm a visual learner. It means you learn by achieving real tasks rather than simply being lectured at. It's personalised too, with attainable goals that actually measure your progress and help you see day by day how you're becoming a more sophisticated thinker. I start on the level that's perfect for me based on my background. Brilliant then designs sets and reviews that are personalised just for me. See here, I can mark my 5-day streak and how I'm beginning to master whatever topic I choose. We've made it through January, and many of my New Year's resolutions were to stay sharp and fit, working out not just my body, but my brain. So even if you feel your resolutions slipping, it's not too late to sign up to Brilliant and get your 2026 back on track. Speaking of getting back on track, let's get back down to Colombia and see what's happening with that dam. Colombia is also home to some of the world's mightiest rivers, but while they provide agricultural abundance, they can also be unpredictable. Aside from providing power, the dam would also have to tame the Cocó River. The Cocó River is Colombia's second largest after the Magdalena. It slithers through the Andes for 965 kilometers before finally joining the Magdalena near Magangi. Indigenous groups and Afro-Colombian communities depend on it for fishing and transport, while the river valley houses millions of Colombians, making it one of the most densely populated Andean corridors. But it also plays another vital role. It supports the Val de Cocó, which is one of Colombia's largest and most productive agricultural regions. The Cocó River supports Colombia's sugarcane industry with more than 200,000 hectares of sugarcane crops. Over 90% of Colombia's sugar and 100% of its ethanol fuel blends come from the Cocó Valley, and its irrigation systems draw directly from the river. Higher up in the basin, especially here in the Eje Cafetero, the Cocó's tributaries sustain another famous Colombian export: coffee. Altogether, this one river sustains one of the richest farming regions in Latin America and supports food security for millions. But where the river gives, it can also take away. It's historically caused crop destruction, livestock loss, soil erosion, and infrastructure damage thanks to seasonal flooding. Colombia's mighty new dam could act like a buffer, evening out the extremes of the river. The reservoir provides flood control capacity, which can lower peak flows during rainy seasons, protect riverbank communities and their fields, and reduce recovery costs after major floods. From pretty much every angle, it was supposed to be a win. And so construction began in 2010, but almost immediately the location of the dam in the central Andes proved incredibly difficult, and not just geographically. Politically, the region surrounding this area has been, well, violent, and that's thanks to Colombia's other famous exports. As a result, the dam's reservoir is thought to cover dozens of mass graves. Experts estimate that there were 3,500 murders, 600 forced disappearances, and 110,000 displacements in this region between 1990 and 2016 alone. Financed with public money, Hidro Ituango was marketed by the government as a step forward from that violence, a development project that was supposed to bring peace and prosperity to a place that had never really known it. The first step of building any dam is diverting the river. Now, if you've watched enough of the B1M's videos, you should know that ordinarily the river is diverted through temporary cofferdams or channels, leaving the site dry for construction. This is as true as it is for the largest dams in the world, as it is for the highest and the very smallest. So let's take a look at the site for this dam, but really take a look at it. How on earth were they going to divert this river? The canyon walls are deep. There is nowhere else for the water to go. Engineers only had one single option. They had to dig tunnels through the mountains. Just to get to the site, workers had to build roads on cliff-like slopes. Huge pieces of construction equipment had to be carried around narrow mountain passes. Then, in 2012, when the main construction of the diversion tunnels was just beginning, the project was mired in controversy thanks to a nefarious bidding process, alleged corruption, and delay after delay. Despite this, work on the tunnels proceeded. Now, usually this is the point where we start talking about TBMs, aka tunnel boring machines. But there's no way that kind of machine would fit through here, so the tunnels were dug the old-fashioned way with explosives. The Ituango tunnels were excavated mostly with the drill and blast technique. First, rigs drilled multiple holes into the rock face, then the holes were filled with controlled charges, and explosives were detonated in a timed sequence to fracture the rock. The rock was then removed by loaders and trucks, and shotcrete, also known as sprayed concrete, as well as rock bolts, steel ribs and mesh were added to stabilise the cavity. These deep tunnel works required constant ventilation, drainage, and monitoring to prevent collapses because this is the Central Andes, one of the most geologically active regions in the world. Landslides and earthquakes are pretty much par for the course. By 2014, 4 years after construction started, the tunnels were complete and the river could finally be diverted. Now, this part's important because it's what led to the disaster that came 4 years later in 2018. Empresas Públicas de Medellín, or EPM, is the state-owned utilities company in Colombia that designed and built the dam. By 2015, the project was very much behind schedule. In fact, the entire thing was supposed to be completed the year before. So EPM signed a $100,000 contract to speed up construction. Works ran 24/7 and managed to recover 18 months of delays, but shortcuts were taken. EPM had an array of financial incentives to keep production on schedule. They were set to receive $22.3 million if the project began to deliver energy as promised before December. The company had already reported the revenue from the dam in its financial budget, and thus would have begun to lose credit standing if the profits weren't realised. By 2017, the dam was 70% complete, and by May 13, 2018, the entire project was just weeks away from being finished. And that's when one of the dam's diversion tunnels collapsed. Authorities ordered the evacuation of more than 25,000 people downstream, fearing the dam could burst. So how did this happen? The diversion tunnels were excavated through highly fractured rock in the steep Andes. Tunnels crossed through fault lines and crushed rock, both of which are prone to sudden deformation. Groundwater had softened the rock, meaning it couldn't hold as much weight as it should have done. There was also a lot more of the river running through the system because it was no longer the dry season. In fact, it was a particularly nasty wet one. A small deformation in the tunnel lining could cause cracking, allow water intrusion, and create larger structural damage. And that's exactly what happened. A deformation in one of the diversion tunnels created a blockage, and water backed up behind the obstruction. With nowhere for the river to go, the tunnel effectively became a pressurized cavity and collapsed. Once that happened, the river lost its primary diversion route, overwhelming the two other routes. In response to this, engineers had to rapidly increase the height of the dam in the space of just a matter of weeks. The wall was raised to 225 metres, high enough to contain the rising water. They then opened and used the spillway, even though it had never been used or even tested yet. That effectively gave the river a controlled outlet, and that did restore partial stability, but things were far from over. Among the downstream consequences were the unplanned flooding of the machine house, structural damage to the intake components, and months of interrupted construction. A Dutch underwater construction specialist was tasked with the underwater isolation of the dam's intake structures. They made custom-designed mechanical plugs which allowed divers to seal off and de-water entire sections of the dam. New diversion tunnels were constructed, and many of the old ones were abandoned. Presently, there are still 4 more turbines to bring online, and once they're installed, the dam will be nearly complete, with the project team targeting 2027. Many lessons have had to be taken away from the Colombia dam disaster, mainly that money and political pressure can't be substitutes for rigorous engineering practice. Local communities were not properly consulted either, and environmental impact reports failed to take into account the enormous risk and cost to human life that the failure of such a project could result in. This project is testament to the huge scale and impact of infrastructure projects, and their ability to impact the lives of millions of people, often for the better, but sometimes for the worse. This video was sponsored by Brilliant. Don't forget that you can learn more about Brilliant by checking out the link below, and that it massively supports the channel when you guys take the time to go and check out our video sponsors. And as always guys, if you thought this video was damn good and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make damn sure you're subscribed.